All right, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. We're going to start right now. So you're at the UX and Data Meetup. Tonight we have a really special event. We've got the UX Awards by the numbers. And we've got a lot of great guests here tonight, too, who are going to be talking and sharing some of the work they've done. My name is Matthew Weber. I run this meetup here. I also run a UX team at a data visualization company called Zoom Data. And I teach UX at NYU. If you need to use the bathroom, ladies' room is over there, men's room is over here. The Wi-Fi password is keep it simple. I'd also like to thank Pivotal Labs, who is our host here tonight. They host us here every month, the second Wednesday of the month, and it's a very interesting place if you're curious about it. They have a great, very interesting process where UX developers, UX people are really involved with the process. I'm always really curious about it. I've worked with a couple of people from here in the past. And you can go online and find out more about their jobs right now. They do have some UX positions open at the moment as well. Let's see. So just curious, who else here is hiring? So we'd like to see a raise of hands. Okay, so we've got like a half dozen people. If you're looking for work, keep your hands up. Now, if you're looking for work, seek these people out afterwards, and I'll put my hand up for later too, because I'm definitely looking for folks. We'll have some drinks afterwards. You'll have your chance to mingle. I should have mentioned this before. The drinks and the snacks are all free and on the house, thanks to Pivotal, of course. So help yourself to that after the show as well. One last thing I want to talk about who we're having here next month. We're having Beaker Labs. They're going to be talking about their product for exploring big data sets. Really interesting product for that allows you to iteratively do visualizations on your data and explore in a very fast, progressive manner. Very, very interesting if you're really into UX and data. So with that, I think I'm ready to pass the mic on. I'm going to introduce Bev May, who's the Executive Director of the UX Awards, and a good friend. I'm glad she's here tonight with the rest of her pals. And let's give a round of applause for Beverly May.
Thanks, Matt. So give me 1 second here. So thanks everyone for coming out, and thanks especially to Matt and Pivotal for hosting us. It's great to be here, and we have a bunch of guests, past judges and winners here that are going to be participating in the panel later on. Tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit just about the UX Awards in general for anyone who is not familiar with them or doesn't know anything about submissions. And then we're going to go into a review, 4-year review of the last 4 years of the awards and what's worked, what hasn't, and the statistics about and trends of what we've seen. Then we have some case studies. I'll show 4 examples of great submissions from last year at the event in San Francisco. And then we're going to do a Q&A with the past winners and judges. So, about the UX Awards, it was the first awards dedicated exclusively to exceptional UX. We started 5 years ago here in New York with a combination of UX groups, including IXDA, Peter's here from IXDA, as well as UXPA and others, and sort of grassroots evolution, both regionally and then nationally and then globally. Our mission has always been to focus on exceptional UX and really promoting and honoring great UX, the people, the processes, and the products. And we were the first award, so we started because there really wasn't an awards at the time that was focusing specifically on honoring great UX. So, we're on a mission here. We're on a mission to elevate and celebrate UX. And there's 5 principles behind that. The first is that we really try and focus on educating people about the value of UX and the impact of UX based on great products and services. We also focus on celebrating and honoring the great people in the industry who have done great work, including students like these UVA students this last year, as well as to focus on exceptional work and really highlighting great work as case studies and examples, best practices for the industry. And most importantly, we like to celebrate people, awesome people, and make a real celebration for us. And we wouldn't have been able to do this without dozens and dozens of partners and sponsors over the years. This last year, in 2014, we had tons of partners and sponsors, local, regional, and national, as well as many supporting sponsors over the years that have helped to make sure that this event happens. So without further ado, let's talk about this upcoming year. We've got 17 awards, of which 3 are crowd voted. So on the crowd voting awards, we've got the overall top crowd vote, which is People's Choice, as well as the highest rated and the most popular. The others are all judged. There's Grand, Gold, Silver, Bronze Student, and Honorable Mention. And the Grand also, aside from a really awesome trophy, like the one that you can see there, you get $1,000, and the Gold includes $250, and everyone gets these trophies. Honorable Mention gets plaques, plus there's champagne. So our judging panel this year is really incredible, I think. It comes, unfortunately, only from 4 cities, New York, SF, Seattle, and London. But it is very diverse in terms of industry. So we've got Irene Au, who's a partner at Khosla Ventures, and she's basically making sure that the Khosla VC portfolio includes design and UX as a key factor in their investments. Bill Flora is a 20-year veteran at Microsoft, who then founded his own agency, Tectonic, in Seattle. He helped design a lot of Microsoft initiatives, including Metro. Katie Dill is head of experience at Airbnb. Jake Barton, a local here in New York, is principal and founder of Local Projects, which specializes in museum and exhibit design, including the 9/11 Memorial. Ian Worley is from Morgan Stanley, head of UX at Morgan Stanley. Giles Colburn wrote a great book, Simple and Usable, very major person in the UX community. Jennifer Killian was one of the partners at Hot Studio that was bought by Facebook, and she's now VP of Digital at McKinsey. She's also local. Alex Cuthbert comes from Google. He's the main UX designer behind Google Translate, amongst other products. And then I am not a judge, but I'm the moderator of the panel. So, some changes for this year, for those who are familiar with the awards. We've improved and streamlined the submissions process extensively. So it's a lot clearer. You can save your submissions. It's better. We're also relying a lot more on direct communications rather than partner outreach. So through our own mailing list, our own email and social media. And if you have not gotten on our mailing list, please make sure you do so over there if you are interested in hearing about the awards and submissions and getting invited to the event. We have a new advisory board this year to help shepherd the awards moving forward. And 2 out of 3 of the members are here tonight. The other one's on a plane on the way here. One is Scott McDonald, who's standing over there. The other is Matt, the host of this UX and Data event in the back. And then there's Todd Leffelt from Huge, who's in the air somewhere. And we've got limited sponsors this year. So in the past, we really spent time and effort soliciting support. And this year, we've tried to just decide to focus specifically on great UX and our mission. And we're doing an invite-only event this year, which is a little bit different. So in the past, we've tried to go for like a 400-some person event. This one's going to be smaller, around 200-some people. And again, if you're on our mailing list, you will be able to attend. So key dates to remember. The most important, of course, is submissions. July 15th is when submissions open. And August 15th is when crowd voting starts. And September 1st is when regular submissions close. But you actually have until September 15th to get your submissions in. And then the awards themselves are on November 16th at Parsons the New School with an event after a celebration event across the street at Grape and Vine. So just remember, September 15th is your deadline. You submit online at uxawards.org. There's two parts. There's a form, and then there's also a case study, and it's all about the case study. So the case study is where you make your pitch and describe why your product and service is awesome and why it should just win an award. And the form is just basically supplementary material for the website, etc. So focus on the case study and look at past submissions. So now you guys are here to hear about UX Awards by the numbers. So let me dive right into it. But first, I just want to ask, does anyone have any basic questions about the submission process or anything like that? Okay. So as you can see, our growth with the awards has shot up dramatically, and this basically is a mirror to the industry. One of the things that I really value about the awards is that it is a mirror for what's happening in general in terms of people's perception of UX, the importance of UX, visibility. When we started, we were basically fighting for relevance, and now, of course, that's no longer the case. And we had about 40% of all submissions that we've ever received last year. Who submits to the awards? Well, we looked at the data, and not surprisingly, we're getting submissions from the countries who have a strong tech presence: North America, Europe, Asia, and Latin America. And in particular, the cities that lead in tech around the world. So because we started in regional, and then we moved national, and then we moved international, we still see that US clearly dominates, but we are seeing an ever-increasing number of submissions from abroad. What's interesting, though, is that even though the U.S. completely dominates so far in total from 4 years of submissions, you're actually far more likely to win relative to your submission if you are based in the UK or Canada. So the UK had 4% of entrants, but they won 11% of the awards, so almost 3 times. And Canada had 2%, but they won 5% of the awards. So, you know, maybe you should move to the UK if you want to win a UX award. Product companies generally perform slightly better than agencies, although it's not a dramatic change. And individuals are basically one-to-one parity. So you see that agencies submitted the most, but they got slightly less awards compared to firms who are doing UX in-house. And larger firms definitely have an advantage. If we start with the individuals here, you can see it was basically one-to-one for a percent of entrants and winners. Very small firms also basically one-to-one. But once we got into small and medium, for some reason, those companies weren't as successful in their submissions overall over the last 4 years, whereas the large and extra large companies definitely had the advantage. And this makes sense because, of course, the larger firms have the resources and the money and the time to be able to dedicate to awards, and the bigger agencies and companies have entire teams that do nothing but put together award submissions. But I'm hopeful that after this event, and one similar to this that we're doing across the country, because we're doing 5 of these and one in London, that we're going to help to turn the scales and allow individuals to learn what makes a great submission so we can get some more diverse submissions. If we look at the sectors, it's interesting. These first 2 here, this is really the agencies, digital design and advertising and marketing. And this is an aggregate of what we defined as sectors over 4 years. So it's a slightly strange mix because the names changed over the years. But basically, we've got agencies here, and then we've got product shops here. And there's a couple interesting ones here. UX-specific agencies or companies definitely performed the best relative to the number of submissions, whereas advertising and marketing firms or even software and internet firms didn't relative to their number of submissions. So it's not that sector matters, but it's just interesting to see how different submissions performed. And if we look at the winning submissions, this gets into how do we judge. So over the course of 4 years, as you would expect, scored higher than the average submissions. And in fact, the breakdown is growing. The gap is growing. How we judge is each judge first allocates a 5-point rating to each submission. So every judge looks at every submission and scores it from 1 to 5. And then we do an average across all of the judges, which is what you're seeing here. But the final step after that is we get together and by consensus we decide on the actual winners. And the judges who are here will be able to talk to this at the end. So you'll see actually here at the top that the very highest scores, which is the light purple, actually were not the winners, it's the dark purple. And that's because let's say we have top 20 highest ranked submissions, but we have 14 awards. We won't just take the highest 14 scores. We'll look at all of the top and consider maybe there's one that had slightly lower score that we actually think is a more valuable submission. And the different judges have to actually advocate for specific submissions based on what they think is particularly exceptional. And if we look at the breakdown, I thought this was kind of fascinating. 2012 was a linear curve, as you might expect, where basically the lower level awards scored at a lower level, and then the most high-value awards had the highest scores. But you can see that that wasn't always the case. In fact, it normally isn't the case. So in 2013, it was almost a flat line, whereas in 2014, there was a slight trend increase. And that gets to the same point, that this final step of deciding who actually wins an award is a consensus-driven approach based on things that are truly exceptional. And sometimes judges will change their mind, or other things will come up that 1 or 2 judges noticed that others did not, that will tip the scales. One thing that was interesting is this last year we introduced crowd voting, and we didn't have any idea whether crowd voting would match what judges thought about the submissions. And in general, interestingly enough, they do match. So this is the top 10 submissions based on crowd votes. So these are the highest crowd votes of the submissions for 2014. And aside from the top ones, you can basically see that they're pretty similar overall. Now we don't allow for one submission to receive 2 awards. So if somebody won a gold, for example, we will not also give that same submission a crowd vote. So that explains why, for example, number 2 here got a great judges score, and it was a little bit different than the crowd vote, and they may not have gotten a crowd voting award. And I love this slide. This slide validates my existence here. So what this shows is we ask a question during the submissions process, which is what is the highest level of years of experience of the most senior UX person on your team. So this isn't the average level of experience, it's the highest level of the most experienced person. And what's interesting is that the 15 to 20 years experience, basically they kill it. They get way more awards relative to their submissions, but somehow over 20 years it drops off, even though they're still performing better. 10 to 15 years, for some reason, they're not performing very well. But generally you can see that those who have more experience as UX professionals do perform better and get more awards. And one thing that's kind of unique about the UX Awards is that we ask for video submissions for the final event. So even if you did not have a video submission at time of submission, in order for you to accept the awards before the event, you have to submit a video. And we can see that there's a linear rise in number of submissions right off the bat for video submissions, and it makes a big difference as to whether you're actually going to win, an ever-increasing difference. And that's because video is such a great way to tell your story and make a cohesive narrative, a much more powerful and impactful way than a PDF where you can't really control the narrative and how people are digesting your content. Plus, for crowd voting, of course, people prefer to watch videos rather than scrolling through a PDF. So you do see this big difference. And finally, I thought this was also interesting. Winners tend to be late. Not hugely late, but you can see that more winners are late than entrants. But who is late? It turns out that the large organizations are overwhelmingly the ones who are late. And that's probably partly because of price sensitivity, because the late submissions cost more, and the large organizations probably don't care about that so much. But it's also, as we've seen, because they're probably putting more time and effort into a great submission. Last couple of slides here on trends. We see that the categories of the UX Awards basically reveal trends in the industry. So in particular, you can see that mobile and tablet has just shot up, and in our first years, there weren't nearly as many mobile entries as you might imagine. And some of the entrant categories are definitely performing better. So for example, anything to do with data visualization and analytics, which should be relevant for this group, is way overperforming compared to the number of submissions we're getting. So you guys should submit. Meanwhile, consumer products and devices, not doing so well. And by the way, what's interesting about this is we don't actually consider the categories at all in the submissions process. So you can choose whatever categories you want. You can choose multiple categories for your submission. It doesn't make any difference. It's not like other awards like the Webbies, where you have to choose one submission and you're locked into that, or you have to pay through the nose for every single category. We just have one submission, and the judges judge based on the best of the best across all submissions. So this is an interesting trend to see exactly what's coming out on top. How do we evaluate? So this is, I think, an important point. We're supposed to be UX designers, which means we start with the user. The user-centered design process is about the user. So if you think about your submission, who is the, quote, user, the audience of your submission? It's other UX professionals and UX judges who are UX professionals. So that means, as you might guess, that your submission should focus on UX, the UX process, US best practices, what went into your product that was UX related, rather than, let's say, a product demo. How do we judge? There's several factors involved. I mentioned that we do this ratings, and then we review, and we have the consensus. For the crowd voting, it's a mixture of highest votes times highest rating. And just to give you a little bit of a sneak peek behind the scenes, this was from 2013. This is the actual spreadsheet that the judges filled out. So you can see here, these were the judges, Judge A through Judge G, and they each gave a rank to the different submissions. And then there was an average of their submissions. And then during the 2013 discussions to reach consensus, we actually ended up re-ranking, coming up with the final awards. And in 2014, it was very similar. So same thing, you can see that the 8 judges here gave a rank. This was after we did an internal initial vote for vetting the bottom 40%. So if you had an incomplete submission, you didn't submit a case study or something like that, we vetted those out on behalf of the judges. And then there was a weighted average applied based on the judges' votes. And as you can see, not everybody voted for everything because they might have had a conflict of interest. So whenever somebody had a conflict of interest, we don't include them in the average. And then this was the final in 2014 where we actually assigned the awards to the different ones. And again, you can see that, for example, this silver here had 3.63 as their average, even though the bronze had 3.94 and this honorable had 4.13. So it wasn't just about your score in the end. So what do you need to do to make an awesome submission? Here's the things that you should not do. So the categories and industry are totally irrelevant. It's just for us to look at industry trends. It doesn't impact your likelihood of winning at all. Sponsors have no impact on whether they win or not. We've got 8 judges every year. They all have to vote, and the judges change every year. And they don't even necessarily know who's a paying sponsor. Same thing for if you know someone. You have to know all 8 judges, so that would be somebody who's pretty in the know to be able to potentially impact every single juror. Most importantly, it's focusing on the UX. So not just pure visual design, making sure that you don't just submit a product demo. We get a lot of those, like just average product demo like they put on their website to describe the product that doesn't talk about UX or UX process at all. Just general sloppiness is definitely not going to put you in the top ranking. And most importantly, if you do not submit a case study, then you're definitely not going to be considered, because that is the primary thing that we look at when we're trying to evaluate projects. So what do you need to do? There's 8 key considerations. The first gets back to the idea of user-centered design and focusing on the user. So who is the user? What are his or her needs? Why is your product or service important for her? And clearly solving those needs with your product and showing how your product clearly solves and addresses those needs. Making sure, of course, that your product is well-designed, intuitive, and usable, which is what many of us consider to be, quote, UX. That's also very important. And, of course, explaining your process. How did you go about approaching the product design process? What were your steps? Did you start with concepting? Did you do personas? What kind of research did you do? Did you do competitive analysis, etc.? What went into your process? And most importantly for us is making sure you've got some user research and testing in there. That is a core tenet of user-centered design, and something that, especially with agency submissions, sometimes is missing. So it's very important to show that you're actually talking to your audience, getting feedback, incorporating testing and research into the product. And your case study has to make sense. So can people follow the case study? Does it follow a narrative? Is it cohesive? And all of these things, as you can see here in purple, apply to any single project. It doesn't even matter what your project is. It could be anything. It could not even exist, but you can apply these best practices to your submission. So this has no bearing on whether you have a good or bad product, where you are in the process, or whether it's a revolutionary product or not. Of course, the top winners tend to also, in addition to those 6 things, have an advanced product that is in some way new or impressive in its own right, and has some real impact on the industry, where they're able to show impact and adoption based on the product and the process that they created. But Several awards will just win based on the first 6, even if the product itself is a little bit humdrum. So it's really important to understand that, because it's empowering for anyone to show how they're approaching any product to make it awesome through great user-centered design processes, and how you can be recognized for your work and your process through the awards. So in summary, there's this nice little formula here. If you have an exemplary product, that's great. But any product can, if you have a superior process and a great story, you have a pretty good chance of winning an award.